Microphone check, 1 2. What is this? It's B Michael here, and I'm back with that KUAW shifting paradigms business, and we are live. Wow, it's been a minute, but that's right, we here. I'm back. Thankful, grateful for KUAW radio. Got Baba G on the ones and twos, always holding it down and keeping it up. I'm your host, B Michael, here with Shifting Paradigms, where you know what it is. We're here to stimulate critical thought in order to realistically redefine our reality and reshape our narrative through dialogue with that Kuji, Chaga, Leah, that good self-determination. That's right. Want to state something real quick that everything I'm saying tonight, all my rights are reserved. They're never waived at any time for any matter. These are my opinions. These are my perspectives. These are my views. And we're going to get into some very intense topics tonight, given what's going on the political landscape of this world, right? We got to always assess the situation. We got to be able to dissect it. We got to analyze it. We got to think critically about it, because I guarantee you, the mainstream will never give you what's going on in reality. They'll give you what they want you to know. They'll give you the agenda, but they won't give you the truth, right? And so that's what we're here to uncover tonight. We're here to talk about that good word, truth. And so tonight, the paradigmatic is one that is challenging for many of us. But the paradigmatic that we're going to be dealing with tonight is called the Luciferian Agenda Paradigmatic. The Luciferian Agenda Paradigmatic. So I've been away for a while, but now I'm back. You know, got married June 4th, 2023 to the love of my life. Been, building with the wife, getting some things in alignment, but here it is. This is a part of me. Shifting paradigms is a part of me, and I definitely want to come back and bring some thunder. And so tonight we're going to talk about, again, the Luciferian agenda. Some may look at it as a conspiracy theory. Some may look at it as religious fanaticism. Some may look at it as something that's completely irrational and illogical. But when you really look at the landscape of what's going on in the world, you have to question, what is the motive for all this? Why are all these things taking place, right? And so we're going to just, open up. I want to open up with some good news, though. We're going to take a thrust, really, of what's going on conflict-wise. We're going to look at the conflicts and how these conflicts are playing into this agenda, the Luciferian agenda, okay? But I want to open up with a solidarity statement from both Palestinians, believe it or not, from some Palestinians, as well as Jews, Ashkenazic and Sephardic Jews. So the article that I'm going to share with you all today comes to us from a Tikkun magazine. Interesting, the word Tikkun comes from a Kabbalistic term of meaning to repair, right? To repair. And so this is a prophetic Jewish interfaith and secular voice that is intended to heal and transform the world, heal the world. And so there's a Palestinian Jewish solidarity statement that was made on October 12th. Of 2023, because what we're seeing is polarity take place. We're seeing divisions of humanity take place. You got pro-Palestinian, you got pro-Israel, right? Where's pro-humanity? Where's pro-righteousness, right? Where's the right side of prophetic history, as opposed to just choosing the side with not really knowing the dynamics? And I gave a pretty in-depth analysis of understanding what's going on historically and prophetically with the Palestinian-Jewish conflict that we say taking place, that goes back easily to this first century of the current era. And if you're not really analyzing it and viewing it from that particular lens, you're not understanding the present dynamics that are taking place. So it's important for us to really go back in time and know the historical context of what's going on. But let's get into this. It says, we are outraged by, mourn deeply, and unequivocally condemn the horrific actions of Hamas. According to Israeli sources, more than 1,200 people were killed and 2,900 injured, most of whom were civilians, and over 100 individuals, including children, women, and the elderly, were taken as hostages into Gaza. We call for immediate release of Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners. Tikkun Magazines and Beit Tikkun, a synagogue without walls, partner with others to write a joint statement that we hope can help to rise above the divisiveness and division and call us to our higher and highest selves. It says, what follows is our joint statement. We invite everyone who agrees with our statement to add your name, so you can read the statement and add your name by clicking here. I'll add these to the text box later on so you all can see these articles here. The Palestinian-Jewish solidarity. The statement is written and signed by Palestinians, Jews, and others who are committed to holding complex truths and striving to overcome polarization. And that's exactly what this particular incident has done. It has polarized humanity. We feel the pain of our people, identify with their pain, and need to work together to uplift our shared humanity. The unfolding horror in Israel and Gaza is an escalation of, they say decades, but I will say centuries of state-sanctioned violence by Israel against Palestinians. Well, so it is decades on that note. Since 1948, maybe going back just a little bit before that. They say it again, the unfolding horror in Israel and Gaza is an escalation of decades of state-sanctioned violence by Israel against Palestinians. We condemn the horrific actions of Hamas against Israeli civilians. We likewise condemn Israel's unbridled, and I will add asymmetric bombing and cutting off access to all basic needs, including food, water, electricity, and medical care. Attacks on Palestinian and Israeli civilians are repugnant. They're repugnant. And my whole premise was, like, again, and these are my statements, all things are stated without prejudice, all rights are reserved at all times, right? There are devils on both sides of this fence, right? And there's humans on both sides of this fence as well. And so the key is to uproot the devils, get the devils up out there, right? And understand humanity and deal with humanity and bring forth humanity out of the situation. It says Israeli violence against Palestinians has been intentionally hidden, slow, and steady. Contrary to what the media is reporting, this attack was not unprovoked. This attack on October 7th was not unprovoked. So says this article. The Israeli and American governments have worked together to suppress and deny the inhumane acts against Palestinians that have led to this moment. There are Palestinians and Jews who have been raising red flags and warning about this inevitable outcome for decades, only to be dismissed and ignored. But there's an agenda to unfold that we have to pay attention to, that unfortunately the humans, the people who are not the social engineers, so to speak, have nothing to do with the conflicts and the incursions that have been planned, believe it or not, for centuries. And we'll get to that tonight. So the world's failure to challenge Israel's ongoing occupation, apartheid, and unbridled violence by settlers and soldiers in the West Bank provides the context for what is happening now. The recent Israeli government's escalation of violence, encroachment of Al-Aqsa Mosque, and its 16-year siege of Gaza has led to the current explosion. We repeat, the brutality of Hamas's attack on Israeli civilians is unjustified as well. Okay? Thanks for that comment, babe. No doubt. So, I just want to leave that article there and just really present that as the foundation, right? The foundation in the sense that we have to understand that humanity is at stake here, right? But what is attempting to be done is to end humanism, is to bring a sense of like exhaustion to humanity, because we get so desensitized, we get so frustrated, we get so really just burned out by all this war that is taking place. And as a result of that, well, we see that it creates more conflict than it does healing. I want to really bring this into a a clear overall perspective agenda-wise. I want to refer to an article that I wrote back actually in 2014. A 2014 article that's entitled The Babylonian Dream. Okay? I'm not going to read the whole article, but it is a excerpt that really captures what this intention is all about. And so, of course, we have to always factor into the equation the United States of America and the roles that they play, because if you're really paying attention to what America is talking about in terms of the conflict over in Israel, they're calling for a Palestinian state, but at the same time they're funding the Israeli government billions of dollars and providing the weapons and the artillery that are just shelling Gaza. How does that work? How can you call for a Palestinian state to exist while at the same time funding the people that are intent on exterminating these people? Like, not funny, but it's just like, how can you do that? That doesn't make sense. And so, taking a look at this, an excerpt from this article says that America's secret destiny, which is going to be a part of this particular matter as well, and ushering the new world order in goes without saying. And this is what ultimately the Luciferian agenda is about: a new world order, a secular world order. Actually, we'll get to what it's really about. Quotes from American presidents like George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and even Barack Obama blatantly state that the idea of forging such a global reality is a major responsibility of the United States and leading the world to it. Advisors and former White House staff like Henry Kissinger, who just died — we got some articles about Henry Kissinger we're going to talk about — and Zbigniew Brzezinski have written numerous articles and books about the reality of creating a new world order. Even the entertainment world has picked up on this notion, promoting the words itself and the symbolism associated with the secret societies that lurk in the shadows, directing world events and the media, so that the world will ultimately accept the dystopian society that will arise from the ashes of chaos into the elite designed order. It would appear as if the entire world is on board for this journey into darkness, but there is a remnant of the population that exists who are intent on preventing the Luciferian inspired agenda from manifesting. But as for America, who now sits at the top of the flagpole to bring about this Vatican-backed Babylonian dream foretold in the book of Daniel, a most popular role is slowly taking shape before the eyes of the world, which will culminate in days soon to come. As the words from the secret destiny of America, the Luciferian doctor made clear, quote, America was always destined to play a preeminent role in the unfolding conspiracy for world empire, for the secret societies who are the arbiters of the great conspiracy against the Most High El on earth, who decreed it so. Moreover, America's function as the powerhouse of the world revolutionary movement was alluded to by some initiates into the mysteries in their Sibylline writings as the secret destiny of America. It was this secret destiny that President George W. Bush, or rather his knowledgeable speechwriters, alluded to when in his second inaugural address he spoke of the new order of the ages, which is an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled, that was articulated initially by Nimrod, who is also known as Amraphel. You read that in Genesis, I believe, chapter 11. For Bush, chapter 12, actually, 13. For Bush and many other presidents, prime ministers, high government officials, and their acolytes in most governments of the world, past and present, are witting and willing machinators in the unfolding conspiracy to bring the world and its people into the tyranny of the one world government. It is thanks in large measure to the treachery of these high government officials that has rapidly brought the conspiracy to its penultimate stage. For dear reader, the final stage is about to begin, and that is the long-planned, long-anticipated Third World War. And it is because of the United States of America corrupted from within by its faithless leaders, which will precipitate this global conflagration that will usher in the kingdom of the anti-Messiah on earth, which is known as the New Order of the Ages, the New World Order, the ancient dream of secret societies throughout the ages, end quote. That's the framework. And to show you how this has been entirely planned out from the 1800s, really going back to way before that. But I want to read an article that is entitled The Palladian Rite. The Palladian Rite was a rite that was mentioned in a book entitled Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike, who was a Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. He was a 33rd degree member of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. And he is, of course, a man from the United States of America. But he wrote through two other people. He wrote Giuseppe Mazzini, who was the founder of the Mafia in 1830. And he wrote Lord Henry Palmerston of England. And, one more, Otto von Bismarck of Germany. So, it says that these three men created a supreme universal rite of masonry that would arch over all other rites, even the different national rites. It centralized all high Masonic bodies in the world under one head. To this end, the Palladium Rite is what the name of this is. The Palladium Rite was created as the pinnacle of the pyramid of power, an international alliance to bring in the Grand Lodges, the Grand Orient, the 97 degrees of Memphis, and the Mizraim of Cagliostro, also known as the Ancient and Primitive Rite, and the Scottish Rite, or the Ancient and Accepted Rite. Lord Palmerston, the Grand Patriarch of, or Master of the Grand Orient Freemasonry, as well as Knight of the Order of the Garter, was Queen Victoria, Foreign Secretary Palmerston. Palmerston was also the Prime Minister during Britain's Opium Wars against China in 1840 and 1858, beginning a policy of narcotics exploitation that would later characterize the Illuminati strategy in the 20th century. Albert Pike had served as a brigadier general in the Confederate Army during the Civil War and was one of the founding fathers and head of the ancient accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, being the Grand Commander of North American Freemasonry from 1859 to 1891. In 1869, he was a top leader of the Ku Klux Klan, and in 1871 wrote the Masonic Handbook, The Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Rite of Freemasonry. In addition to a Supreme Council located in Charleston, South Carolina, where he has a statue erected in his honor, Pike established the Supreme Councils in Rome, Italy, led by Mazzini, London, England, led by Palmerston, and Berlin, Germany, led by Otto von Bismarck. He set up 23 subordinate councils in places throughout the world, including 5 Grand Central Directories in D.C., Montevideo in South America, and Naples in Europe, and Calcutta in Asia, and Mauritius in Africa, which were used to gather information. These branches have been the secret headquarters for the Illuminati activities ever since. But in a letter that he wrote to Mazzini dated August 15 of 1871, Pike graphically outlined plans for 3 world wars seen as necessary to bring about the one world or new world order, or the new order of the ages. For a short time, this letter was on display in the British Museum in London and was copied by William Guy Carr, former intelligence officer in the Royal Canadian Navy and author of Pawns in the Game and Satan, the Prince of the World. Carr summarizes that, quote, the First World War was to be fought so as to enable the Illuminati to overthrow the powers of the czars in Russia and turn that country into a stronghold of atheistic communism. Check. That was done. The differences stirred up by the agentur of the Illuminati between the British and German empires were to be used to foment this war. After the war ended, communism was to be built up and used to destroy other governments and weaken religions. Check. That had taken place. That's what the Red Scare was all about. But this was, again, a chess move. This wasn't just something that just developed out of nowhere. This is called strategy. This is the grand chessboard, right? World War II. It was to be fomented by using the differences between fascists and political Zionists, the Nazis and the Zionists. We'll talk about that a little later. This was to be fought so that Nazism would be destroyed and the power of political Zionism increased so that the sovereign state of Israel could be established in Palestine. Now, it's interesting. You have True Torah Jews. They're called True Torah Jews. You can go to a website, True Torah Jews, who condemn political Zionism. Why? Because they know that the political Zionists, such as the founder Theodor Herzl, was an atheist. He had no affiliation to Torah whatsoever. Okay? And so they condemned this particular political entity in the fact that it is not Torah based, and that the state of Israel, they would say these are religious rabbis who were the ones who actually suffered during the Holocaust at the hands of the atheist Jews, right, that were against the political state of Israel, the state of Israel, not the kingdom of Israel, not the kingdom of Israel, the state of Israel. There are two differences, and they know that that is against Torah to establish a state. Okay. But during World War II, international communism was to be built up until it equaled in strength that of united Christendom. At this point, it was to be contained and kept in check until required for the final social cataclysm, World War III, which was to be fomented by using the differences the agents of the Illuminati stir up between political Zionists and the leaders of the Muslim world. So you hear that. The political Zionists against the leaders of the Muslim world would foment all the conditions that would bring forth World War III. This is the Luciferian agenda. The war is to be directed in such a manner that Islam and political Zionism, including the state of Israel, will destroy themselves, while at the same time the remaining nations, once more divided against each other on this issue, will be forced to fight themselves into a state of complete exhaustion, physically, mentally, spiritually, and economically. That's what attrition does. They're wearing us out with all these wars. It's been continuous war from World War I forward. Really, you can go back to the French Revolution, right? When the Rothschilds funded both sides of the French Revolution, they put Napoleon Bonaparte in power, and they also have the other entities that they were funding as well, okay? But that's how war works. It's business, okay? But there's also a business and agenda behind it. There's an outcome that is sought. Pike then told Mazzini that after World War III would have ended, a global social cataclysm will be provoked that will be greater than the world has ever known. He says that, quote, we shall unleash the nihilists, meaning the terrorists, and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm which in all horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, the origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers of civilization and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light, listen to this, through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out into the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. So that's what these wars are all about. They're wearing humanity out so that you don't want to deal with any type of religious ideology, because you're seeing what these three unclean spirits coming out of the mouth of the dragon, the false prophet, and the beast, Revelation 16 talks about, that are leading the world into all these wars and causing all this bloodshed. You don't want to deal with that religion, right? And so, not knowing where to turn, when they finally introduced the true doctrine of Lucifer to the world, which they're doing right now. They're doing it clearly right now. There's so much Luciferianism amidst humanity that if you don't know what the mystery of iniquity and the secret of lawlessness is, you are a part of the Luciferian agenda. And Lucifer disguises and masquerades about as an angel of light, doing good deeds. That's the trick. That's the trick that got so many people tricked that they don't see what Lucifer is really doing behind the scenes. And so, continuing on, that's what these wars were about. And so we talked about someone who has recently died. There was a man who had been very instrumental in a lot of the America's geopolitical agenda. His name was Henry Kissinger. He died just last month. This is an article brought to us by Foreign Policy in Focus. Scholars, advocates, and activists seeking to make the U.S. a more responsible global partner is what the mission of this particular periodical is about. The article is entitled, "And Here's to You, Henry Kissinger." This is by Walden Bellow. He wrote this today. He says, on the occasion of his death at 100, praises and denunciations of Henry Kissinger are being sung and spewed out in record numbers. And the reason why I'm bringing him into the light now is because we just saw the light, the very diabolical light of Albert Pike and what his agenda was in bringing forth the Luciferian agenda. Now we're going to see how it's more contemporized in the life and unfortunately, well, I won't say unfortunately, but in the life and the death of Henry Kissinger. So again, his praises and denunciations are being sung and spewed out in record numbers. Walden says, let me add to the praises. More than anyone else, Henry, along with his boss, Richard Nixon, was responsible for my transformation into an activist. So he's saying, thank you, Henry, for making me an activist because of your diabolical ways. The transition from being a free-floating intellectual into an activist took place unexpectedly. It happened sometime in April of 1970 when Kissinger and Nixon said that they were going to end the war in Vietnam by expanding it to Cambodia. I was rushing along Prospect Road where Princeton's eating clubs and fraternities were located to attend class when I was attracted to a commotion at a building housing the Institute of Defense Analysis. A crowd of about 100 surrounded some 15 people who had sat down and linked arms to block the entrance to the Institute, which was known to be doing contract work for the Pentagon. I crossed the street to see things more out of curiosity than anything else. Then a phalanx of policemen arrived and shoved people aside in order to clear a path to arrest those who were seated on the ground with arms linked. I'm not going to read that. But he said this. By the time that Kissinger and Nixon invaded Laos in early 1971 to destroy the traffic on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, this man says he had become a part of an informal leadership of the anti-war movement on campus. We call for boycotts of classes. So really, this is the man who actually upped the ante in the policing of the world that the United States has played, which is something constitutionally that America is not supposed to do. America is not supposed to be a world police officer, right? But that's something that America has done, but there is an agenda even in that the neocons, the Project for a New American Century, PNAC, is all about as well. And so Henry Kissinger, again, his most dangerous action, which could have led to a direct military confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union, received no mention in the obituaries of the Post and the Times. In the endgame of the October War in 1973, Kissinger chaired a meeting of the National Security Council that raised the United States military nuclear forces to DEFCON 3. Okay, you heard Kanye West recently use that particular term, to be on high alert. Okay. The conventional wisdom is that the Soviet Union was threatening to intervene militarily because of Israeli violations of the ceasefire that were leading to the annihilation of the Egyptian Three Corps. As a result of Kissinger's decision, according to the conventional wisdom, The heightened state of alert convinced the Soviet Politburo to reverse its decision to intervene. It's true that Israel violated the ceasefire that Kissinger arranged with Soviet Premier Alexei Kosygin, but there is no truth to the view that the Kremlin was preparing to intervene. And so this is a modern day proponent of Albert Pike's Palladium right, enhancing and exacerbating circumstances globally to bring the world onto the brink of war. War is the drum that these individuals beat. Why? Because there's profit involved, one, but two, because they want to unveil the pure doctrine of Lucifer. Interestingly, one of the most prominent newsmen by the name of Walter Cronkite, at his retirement statement, actually he came back and spoke to somewhere, but if you look up Walter Cronkite and Satanism, he literally said in a video, you can go on YouTube and watch, he says, "Won't you join me in worshiping or serving Satan?" He literally comes out his mouth and says this. And this is one of America's most foremost talking heads in history, Walter Cronkite. But he literally espoused and proclaimed his allegiance and his service to Satan. You can look that up. I'll put that in the link too. But Nixon was a very huge proponent in this. So Kissinger was a very huge proponent of this, and he died. And this is why I wanted to bring him into the fold, to understand what he has done. And one of the most savage things that he did was to create a national security memorandum 200, which is about depopulation. While the Creator tells his people to be fruitful and multiply, here it is, you have other people with a Malthusian mindset talking about cull the masses. Cut them off, right? Destabilize it. And I just want to get into the conclusion of this because, I mean, you can get into NSSM 200 and get into all of its details, but if you look at, again, the main points of it, he says this: on the magnitude and urgency of the problem, what he's calling overpopulation, he's saying, one, world population growth is widely recognized within the government as a current danger of the highest magnitude, calling for urgent measures. Two, it is of the utmost urgency that governments now recognize the facts and implications of population growth, determine the ultimate population size that makes sense for their countries, and start vigorous programs at once to achieve their desired goal. Like, kill the people off. Three, population factors are indeed critical in and often determinants of violent conflict in developing areas. Segmental or religious, social, and racial differences, migration, rapid population growth, differential levels of knowledge and skills, rural, urban differences, population pressures, and the spatial location of population in relation to resources. In this rough order of importance, all appear to be important contributions to conflict and violence, especially when you exacerbate it, especially when you equip one side with more weapons than the other, right? A la Rwanda, right? A la Sudan right now, right? A la Ukraine and Russia, right? When you look at all these global conflicts and conflagrations, you got to follow the money trail to see who's really behind it and why it's going on. The people find ways to coexist. We can find ways to coexist. In fact, prior to 1948, and I've been to Israel twice. Prior to 1948, I spoke with a tour guide by the name of Ali Jita. He's a fifth generation Afro-Palestinian from Chad. But he says prior to 1948, there was coexistence between Palestinians and Jews and Christians in that land prior to 1948. He said after 1948, it all changed. It got a little more divisive. It got a little more discriminatory. It got a little more hostile and ambivalent towards people who had been there established for generations. Okay? So differences, yes, they can create a little tensions from time to time, but not to the degree where it becomes outright and just blatant war. 4, where population size is greater than available resources or is expanding more rapidly than available resources, There is a tendency toward internal disorders and violence, and sometimes disruptive international policies or violence. So these are the problems that he's identifying here. 5, in developing countries, the burden of population factors added to others will weaken unstable governments, often only marginally effective in good times, and open the way to extremist regimes, which typically are put in power. The report gives 3 examples of population wars: the El Salvador-Honduras soccer war, the Nigerian civil war, the Pakistan-India-Bangladesh war. Population growth, number 7, over the years will seriously negate reasonable prospects for the sound social and economic development of the peoples involved. And 8, lastly, past experience gives little assistance to predicting the course of these developments because the speed of today's population growth, migrations, and urbanization far exceeds anything the world has ever seen before. Moreover, the consequences of such population factors can no longer be evaded by moving to new hunting or grazing lands, by conquering new territory, by discovering or colonizing new continents, or by immigration in large numbers. The world has ample warning that we all must make more rapid efforts in social and economic development to avoid or mitigate these gloomy prospects. We should also be warned that we all must move as rapidly as possible towards stabilizing national and world population growth. He's saying leadership is vital and that you have to have successful family planning. This is what Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger's diabolical vision of pretty much, what do they call that? Eugenics was put into place to keep population at a sustainable, right, quote unquote, sustainable mark. He also goes on to say what must be done. We must control the population growth, and migration must be a part of any program for improvement of lasting value. He says this conference, the NSSM conference, adopted by acclamation only the Holy See, the Vatican, stating a general reservation, complete world population plan of action. He says our objective should be to assure the developing countries make family planning information, education, and means available to all their people by 1980. Only nominal attention is currently given to population education or sex education in schools. The recommendation is that the U.S. agencies stress the importance of education of the next generation of parents, starting in elementary schools, toward a 2-child family ideal. The aid stimulate specific efforts to develop means of educating children of elementary school age to the ideal of the 2-child family. Okay, but this education that is taking place is a real dumbing down to keep the people manageable, right? And then lastly, he goes on to say abortion is vital to the solution. While the agencies participating in the study have no specific recommendations to propose on abortion, the following issues are believed important and should be considered in the context of a global population strategy. Certain facts about abortion need to be appreciated, he says. No country has reduced its population growth without resorting to abortion. Indeed, abortion, legal and illegal, now has become the most widespread fertility control method in use in the world today. It would be unwise to restrict abortion research for the following reasons: the persistent and ubiquitous nature of abortion and widespread lack of safe abortion techniques. Keep in mind, in the book of Exodus, when Israel started to proliferate, when they started to grow as a people, and they started to fill the land, the scripture says, one of the plans that the wise men of Egypt took to enslave them was population control, to kill all the males off. That's a form of genocide, okay? That's a very Luciferian agenda. The culling of life, the taking of life is a very Luciferian agenda. Why so much corruption? Why is there so much corruption? Well, let's take a look at this article here. The corruption results from this article that I present to you from Press Corps. So much corruption in the world because millions serve the Roman emperors and their synagogue of Satan. I'm not going to read this whole entire article. This was written on April 16th of 2023. by Paul Kincaid. He says there's so much corruption in the world because millions serve the Pope and their synagogue of Satan. The Pope and his ministers, servants teach the Catholic Church followers to be corrupt throughout their whole life. The Pope and his ministers teach Catholics to sin during every Mass. Every Catholic Church Mass teaches those in attendance to worship and serve false gods and their idols. Worshiping and serving false gods and their idols violates the Most High's 10 Commandments. You shall have no other mighty one before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth below. So continuing on. One line from Scripture emphatically contradicts the Catholic Church and every pope's claim that divine and universal authority was bestowed upon the Catholic Church and its popes by the Messiah himself. This is what the Catholic Church dogma proclaims. It says, quote, the Son of God, Redeemer of the human race, our Lord Jesus Christ promised when about to return to his heavenly Father that he would be with this church militant upon earth all days, even unto the end of the world. However, this is what the Bible states in Revelation 12:5. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule the nations with an iron scepter, and her child will be snatched up to the Most High and to his throne. So what's going on in this scripture? Read it a few more times. St. Peter's Basilica is the world's largest church, and it is the center of the Roman Emperor Constantine's created Catholic Church. St. Peter's Basilica was built in and is in Rome, Italy, not in the Holy Land where the Messiah was born. The Catholic Church Vulgate, Revelation 2:9, informing you that the Catholic Church is the synagogue of Satan. Quote, I know thy works and thy tribulation and poverty, but you are rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. This is also saying that Catholics are not Christians. Catholics are deceived into believing they are by the Catholic Church and its Roman emperor, who is the Pope. The Pope is and has always been a Roman emperor. Every pope has inherited and taken the title of Pontifex Maximus. The title Pontifex Maximus was used by Roman emperors long before Roman Emperor Constantine I formed the Catholic Church in 325 of AD. Roman Catholic historians note that as emperor, he was the head, the Pontifex Maximus, of the official religion. The Roman emperor formed Catholic Church religion was and is today that of Sol Invictus, the invisible Son. And I'm just going to drop that right there. There's much more I want to get into, but this is where the corruption heads at. This is the head, the capital of this particular matter. Okay? But there are also some others who are a part of this particular matter that are tied into this. And this is an article written by Helen Glass yesterday, who calls the article The Zionist Triangle, America, Britain, and Israel. I'm not going to read the entire article, just some excerpts from it. She says the purpose for the resettlements in Palestine by the Zionists was to define an Israel wherein European assimilation was no longer the criteria. Eastern European Zionists were vilified for their secularism within predominantly Orthodox countries throughout the 19th century. So the secular Jews who became political Zionists were pretty much vilified for their lifestyle by those who were observant of the Torah. Theodor Herzl of the World Zionist Organization proposed Palestine instead of Argentina, and instead of there was a country in South Africa as well that they wanted to attend, for the establishment of a nationalist colonization of Israel as a statehood for secular Ashkenazi without the burden of religion. Why? Because the adoption, going back to the Palladium Rite, because of the adoption of Marxist communism had been their stipulated revolution since the advent of Jewish enlightenment, which became Jewish nationalism as of 1881, replacing deism with rationality. Argentina and Canada were chosen for resettlements by Baron de Hirsch, a wealthy Jewish banker who wanted large swaths of agriculture land to come under Zionist rule. Every philanthropic charity for which the Zionists donated was to benefit only secular Jews in education, cooperative factories, and banks within a socialist communist framework, right? So this is the other spectrum of it, right? Just kind of moving on into this. Because now what we're dealing with is a directive that individuals knew what was going on prior to this October 7th incident that taken place. Now, I got family that's pretty much family that lives in Israel. And they said it was unimaginable. They've been there for over 15 years. They experienced some missiles before, but they said nothing like this. They have experienced nothing like this, and taking nothing away from what has happened, but you have to understand how it happened. Not what happened, right? What happened is one thing. How it happened is an entirely different thing. And what we think we know based on what the media has shown us is not what we know. There's a damning report. A damning report that is mentioned here that from globalresearch.ca, written by Ronan Bergman and Adam Goldman, the New York Times, on the 30th of November, entitled "The Israel Knew Hamas's attack plan more than a year ago," which was outlined in a 40-page document codenamed Jericho Wall. This is a blockbuster New York Times report. It says Israeli officials obtained Hamas's battle plan for the October 7 terrorist attack more than a year before it happened. Documents, emails, and interviews show. But Israeli military and intelligence officials dismissed the plan as aspirational, considering it too difficult for Hamas to carry out. The approximately 40-page document, which the Israeli authorities codenamed Jericho Wall, outlined point by point exactly the kind of devastating invasion that led to the deaths of about 1,200 people. The translated document, which was reviewed by the New York Times, did not set a date for the attack, but described a methodical assault designed to overwhelm the fortifications around the Gaza Strip, take over Israeli cities, and storm key military bases, including a division headquarters. Hamas followed the blueprint with shocking precision. The document called for a barrage of rockets at the outset of the attack, drones to knock out the security cameras, and automated machine guns along the border, and gunmen to pour into Israel en masse in paragliders, on motorcycles, and on foot, all of which happened on October 7th. The plan also details about the location and size of Israeli military forces, communication hubs, and other sensitive information, raising questions about how Hamas gathered its intelligence and whether there were leaks inside the Israeli security establishment. The document circulated widely among Israeli military and intelligence leaders, but the experts determined that an attack of that scale and ambition was beyond Hamas's capabilities, according to documents and officials. It is unclear whether Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu or other top political leaders saw the document as well. Interestingly, though, let's look at some other things that had taken place. Let's see. According to Israel National News, an article that was written today, December 4, 2023. The article is entitled "Over 100 Soldiers Diverted from Gaza to Judea and Samaria Just Days Before the Massacre." 2 troop companies were relocated from the Gaza's division to Judea and Samaria just 2 days before the Hamas massacre. It says that 2 troop companies were relocated from the Gaza division during the Jewish holidays to stifle terrorist riots in KUAW just days before the October 7 attack. CAN News military correspondent Roy Sharon reported. 2 companies from the Commando Brigade that were reinforcing the Gaza division during the holidays as part of a general staff standby, not as a routine security force, were called from the Gaza envelope to the KUAW region 2 days before the massacre. Over 100 soldiers were indeed diverted from the jurisdiction of the Gaza division to that of the Samaria Brigade, Sharon wrote. He noted that to the best of my inquiries, these companies that left the Gaza division were not replaced with other forces. The IDF spokesperson did respond to this question as well. Sharon also mentions the fact that just a day ago he reported that the IDF did not move forces from Gaza to Judea and Samaria. Now Sharon claims, unfortunately, the information the IDF officers gave me was erroneous. Yesterday they explained that they did not remember or know that the 2 companies came from the Gaza envelope. Wow. That sounds kind of sketchy right there to me, because this is a chessboard. This is not something that is just happenstance, especially of that particular magnitude. It's not going to just happen. But what's so interesting, another Israeli Israeli news article, Israel National News, it says, written today, after 3 months hiatus, Netanyahu's corruption trial restarts. Interesting. He had a corruption trial going on. There were all kinds of riots and stuff that were taking place in Israel. Well, that would be a great diversion. That would be a little sleight of the hand, a little magic trick to get people's attention taken off of what he got going on. That's Luciferian, though. That's how this agenda works. Court restarts Netanyahu trial, focusing on case 4000. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's trial will restart Monday morning in the Jerusalem District Court. Today. It started today. The trial was put on hold during the court's recess during the holidays and was not renewed immediately after the holidays due to the outbreak of the war with Hamas. That's convenient for Benjamin Netanyahu. Monday's hearing will focus on case 4000, with the judges hearing testimonies from police, from investigators, as well as securities authorities investigator. Case 4000 involves allegations that Netanyahu made promises of favorable regulatory changes to Bezek owner Shaul Elovitch in exchange for favorable coverage of the prime minister and his family on KUAW, Elovitch's news site. The most important thing right now is to restart Netanyahu's trial and busy the prime minister with outrageous testimonies and delusional trifles, Minister Dudi Anslam said. This is an unprecedented disgrace, so says one of his ministers. Very interesting, though, how that all just lined up. So, let's look at this particular matter here. There's 20 things that I want to share. We're going to wrap this up. That this war has going on that you're not supposed to know. This is from War is a Crime website, a blog about a criminal enterprise, which is war. 20 things that you're not supposed to know about the war on Gaza. This is written by David Swanson. 1, it's a U.S. war on the U.S. government's preferred model. Okay? The ideal for the war of the U.S. government and the weapons dealers that have such control over it is a war fought with U.S. weapons by non-U.S. fighters. The war in Ukraine, the Saudi war on Yemen, and the current war on Gaza, they risk few U.S. lives directly but enrich the U.S. oligarchs substantially. Okay? 2, it's a war against, not for, a rules-based order. It's a war against a rules-based order. Over a month ago, the U.S. government opposition blocked a United Nations resolution for a ceasefire in the massacre in Gaza. In the preceding years, the U.S. has vetoed 46 resolutions on Israel, 34 of them related to its crimes in Palestine and the need for peace. The U.S. presidents may talk about a rules-based order, but runs the world's leading abuser of the veto, leading dealer of weapons, leading holdout on basic human rights and disarmament treaties, and leading opposition of international courts. Number 3, it's a war. It's a genocide. And most wars are genocide. Thus far in Gaza and Israel since the beginning of October, the proportion of the casualties that have been Israeli is not as small as the proportion of casualties in Iraq or Afghanistan that were U.S. casualties. The speed of the killing, the rhetoric of the officials, the presence of social media users, the wideness of the grassroots opposition around the world, these are all different and extreme, but Ukraine is the war that is atypical, not Gaza. Continuing going. 4, the war is not separate from the creation of Israel in 1948, but a continuation of it. It goes on mattering, decade after decade, that the most U.S. students never encountered the word Nakba. It matters that Israel was created in 1948 through war and terrorism, through massacring families, driving some 750,000 people out of their homes, including indigenous African Israelites, including different indigenous black Israelites, because the Western Wall, when I was there, it was previously called the Moorish Quarter. I learned this when I was there the second time in 2016 from a brother who is the spokesperson of the Kingdom of Yah from Dimona, who had pictures of residences that were there, which was the first thing that they razed, that they destroyed when they got there to that area. They had to destroy the Moorish quarter, which is where there was an indigenous melanated presence, heavily melanated presence in Israel. They moved them all to the prison gate. It's not called the prison gate anymore, but they moved all the indigenous melanated people to what they called at one time the prison gate. I'm just going to read these off now because I'm not going to get into a time little constraint here. The war is not being done humanely, and there is no such thing. Number 6, Israel is lying, and it does not matter. Number 7, it's not okay to murder non-civilians. Number 8, war and bigotry are not opponents, but partners. They go hand in hand. Number 9, the ceasefire proves diplomacy works, delegitimizing recommencement. But they don't want a ceasefire. Number 10, the two-state delusion is not helping. Number 11, 0 states will be soon possible in an overheated desert, okay, because it's warming. Number 12, war is a distraction, diversion, delusion, and disaster. Number 13, every day of war risks a wider war and a nuclear war. So we're getting closer to these things the more war goes on. 14, funding for wars is a sign of degenerate society, but also of desperation. People are desperate. Number 15, we are many, they are few. Organize, organize, organize. Let your voice be heard. Speak out against the corruption, right? Stand in solidarity with righteousness. Stand in solidarity with truth. Search for the truth. 16, activism gets the job done. Where are the activists? Where are the outspoken individuals who stand against corruption and injustice? Number 17, we need to prioritize demilitarization and denuclearization. Let us beat our swords into plowshares, right? Proclaim that. This is what the good news is all about. If you are a believer of the Messiah, well, we need to bring in the age of peace. And we do that by exposing the lies and the darkness. Number 18, governments do not try to end wars. They exacerbate them. Why? Because they benefit from them. Number 19, the Monroe Doctrine should be recalled after tens of millions of fatalities. Okay, this is during World War I. And 2, abolition is the way. That's what the trial by ordeal, dueling, slavery, and other supposedly permanent structures of stability and goodness. War needs to be abolished. The peace movement has allies and advisors in the movements to abolish police, prisons, and other problematic institutions, and vice versa. It's a time for a world beyond war. But we are at war with ourselves, and this is where this all comes from. But I want us to know here tonight that this is the start of a new day, and we have to start making efforts to bring forth light, to bring forth love, to bring forth life, peace, and justice and truth to society, and we all have the call to do that. That's my call to action for y'all right now, including myself. I'm holding myself to that same standard. But I want to thank you all for tuning in. This is B. Michael here. I'm with KUAW Radio. Got Baba G on the 1 and 2s. This is brought to you by the Black Family Technology Awareness Association. KUAW Radio is shifting paradigms. These are all my views that I share here tonight. There's nothing to do with KUAW. I just thank KUAW for the opportunity to share and to bring these words to you all. I'll be back in 2 weeks. I will have a guest here with me in 2 weeks, getting back into the swing of things. Felt good. Hope these words resonated with you all, challenge you all. Dig deep. Start doing your research, all right? Don't just listen to the news. Dig deep. This is B. Michael with Shifting Paradigms, signing off. Peace and power. Shalom, shalom.